Okay, last topic. Sam, I'm going to start with you on this one. How would you round out the roster to get us in contention and ready for the regular season?
To round out the roster, I would probably go a bit more linebacker depth. I definitely like, as I said earlier, the Justin Hilliard signing. Really like that. I also like I think it's Elijah something out of Kansas State. He seems like a pretty decent player too. But those two guys apparently are primarily special teams role guys from what I've heard. Specifically Hilliard, I know for sure. The Kansas State linebacker, I need to do a bit more research on. But I definitely think they could improve a little bit more with another linebacker if they could sign. Because as I said on our stream on Tuesday on my channel, you have three guys backing up who Demetrius Fillington-Fowles, I definitely think they have more faith in him than I did at the time. So I'm not going to talk about him. But otherwise, Jonas Griffith and Nathan Jerry, I don't really want to go into the season with that. I think maybe adding another linebacker would be a good idea. Also, one other thing, a pass-catching tight end. I still think we need that. I know we got this guy, Josh Peterson, from Louisiana Monroe, I believe it is. He's Doug Peterson's son. He's an undrafted free agent. He was a one-year wonder, went undrafted. I never heard of the guy until we took him. So I personally think they could go another pass-catching tight end. I don't know how many guys are out there for that, but that could be a good idea. A lot of people, I feel like one of you guys may say wide receiver. Before you say that, here's why I don't think we're going to take a wide receiver is a few reasons. First of all, the fact that they didn't take one shows that they believe in Jalen Hurd. And second of all, they got Austin Watkins to help with that wide receiver depth. That is a guy I really like. That guy should have been drafted. So we're very lucky to have him on this team. But linebacker depth and a receiving tight and a pass catching tight end are the two things that I'm hoping that the Niners can add.
Okay. All right. Ben, what about you?
I think for me, when I'm looking at how to round out this roster, I want to try and lean even more into this big bruising bully team that we're going to build with Trey Lance. And to me, there's offensive things we need to address, but first I want to start with the defense. I think we still need to address the secondary position. If we get one injury, we're one Jason Verrett injury away from being derailed, honestly, I feel, because if you look at our secondary beyond that, it starts getting really thin once you take Jason Verrett off that depth chart. And to me, that's just the way the NFL is going. Teams need more and more and more corners. If you look at what the Miami Dolphins are doing, they don't think they have enough corners, and they already have some of the best in the league. So I want to go and get more corners. For me, that's one of the more important things. With our front seven, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with Sam, but I feel in free agency and overall, they've addressed a lot of the depth that they need to in the front seven. I might disagree with you a little bit on the linebacker position just because I think they are shored up in that position. And just with the way everything in the NFL is going, linebackers are becoming less and less important. Not that, they aren't important at all, but corners are just so much more important with the passing offense, as you see in the NFL. But if I'm going to go to the offense, one thing I definitely want to see them add is another pass catcher, and that can be at tight end or wide receiver. But to me, it has to be someone who's going to complement Trey Lance's skill set better or add that Kendrick Bourne type of role that we just don't have right now. If we're going to go and get a receiver, we need a possession receiver, a third down receiver, a red zone threat. But if we're going to go with a tight end instead of a wide receiver, get someone who can block, someone who can get in there. And so when we have Kittle, we can have Kittle and that tight end who might be better than Dwelly in terms of blocking. And you can build this bruising run offense. To me, that's the important thing is building around that run offense that we're going to have in the future. That's going to be, even though it's all the old Shanahan stuff we love, it's going to be a lot more power. It's going to be a lot more of what Trey Lance does and what fits his skill set really well. So to me, you got to get those blocking tight ends, even though I think we have two really good tight ends, but even then, hey, if they want to go get another running back, even though they already have a lot, go and do it because we're going to be running the ball a lot. I don't agree with that. Austin Watkins is quite Kendrick Bourne right now, but who knows in a few years if he develops right, he could be a worthwhile player for this team. I have to agree a lot with Sam. I loved what he said. I think our best day three overall move was picking up Austin Watkins on undrafted free agency. In terms of value, that was a guy Niners fans wanted to be drafted at 194. So yeah, overall, but if I'm just going to round out the roster, another pass catcher potentially, just something to make the offense a little more dynamic, because like we've seen with Debo and Ayuk, they can get injured. And if both of those guys are injured, that's scary. So yeah, I definitely want to add one more pass catcher.
All right.
And also, can I just touch on this?
Yeah,
Can I just touch on this cornerback point really quickly? There are still a lot of free agent quarterbacks out there. I'll just read a few. Josh Norman, Jason McCourty, Brian Poole, Brashad Breeland, Garyon Conley. You could get Nickel Roby-Coleman for the slot. Dre Kirkpatrick could be a good option. There's a lot of good options out there. I didn't even Darquise Denard, did he sign somewhere? I don't really know. I'm just looking at Spot Track right now. Dare I say it, Richard Sherman could come back.
Hey, he could. And if you even look, there's a guy like there's a guy like J.C. Jackson available. There's a lot of things available. And I just want to make this point really quick before I hand it off. The Niners are going to have a great opportunity if they get rid of Jimmy G to build this team up even more. You know, that's got to be scary for the rest of the division. They have $20 million that they're going to be playing with essentially. So if we're looking at that second wave of free agency, the Niners are going to be that team that's going to take advantage. They can get some either one big splash guy or add 3, 4, 5 guys for depth. So we'll have a lot of options no matter what, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Early says, do you think that Warner could potentially show more in year 2? Yeah, I agree. I mean, as a blocker, you said that you wanted the blocker at tight end. Ben, he's the guy. He's on that roster. So I think that in that aspect, he definitely can show us a little bit more. Bay, what about you? How would you like to round out the roster?
One more thing. I was just shaking my head on that comment because as a pass catcher, I don't really see him being the pass catcher. Just want to put that in really quick.
Yeah, now, I agree with you.
I'll let Eric talk now. I've been talking for too long.
No, you're good.
Sam, well, let me tell you something. I watched Charlie Warner's high school highlights. The guy was a running back, and this was when we drafted him last year, and it made me think that he had some potential after the catch because he was electric as a high schooler, but we all know the NFL is a different game. I think he actually could add a little bit in the past, kind of like a Selleck. Remember we had some Selleck time? I think he could make some Selleck type plays.
I think
he could. I think, yeah. And I was checking
you went a little Mel Kiper on me. He could make some Selleck type plays. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
I've been watching too much ESPN lately, But guys, I was checking out some remaining free agents, and there's a pass rusher who has spent some time with a Bosa, and he's had some success in his career. He's had some injuries, but he's a gentleman by the name of Melvin Ingram. He's a consummate pro. He's the pro's pro. And if we were to bring him in, we wouldn't need to put him out there for 30 or 40 snaps a game. You know, give him 15 snaps, some pass rushing reps. Let him work opposite of Bosa or rotate him in because I don't think Bosa is going to get the same usage that he had in 2019. Another veteran, I like our defensive tackles. You know, I know we've brought in Kerr. We brought in, Kinlaw. We want Kinlaw to take a step. But Geno Atkins is out there, and I know he's old, but I love Geno Atkins. So if for the right price, same thing. He might be able to give you just a bonus if you limit his snaps, tell him go all out for his 10 snaps, Geno Atkins. And Sam, you were talking about the receiver position. You don't think maybe we don't need to address it? I got one guy who I think could help us out, and he's out there, and it's Golden Tate. I know he said something in the past that, I would never play for the Niners. He was a Seahawk or whatnot. Hey, but when it's contract season and you're looking around and thinking, I think the Niners might look pretty appealing if we give him a call. I've always liked how Golden Tate is good after the catch. We know Kyle Shanahan likes his yak. Golden Tate's a yak guy. He's also had some injuries when he's with the Giants. I had him in fantasy, and I dropped him early on. You don't want Golden Tate for fantasy purposes. But
Ryan
Kerrigan, that's another guy. Because while we have brought in some pass rushers, you can never have too many pass rushers. So if a veteran is available, bring him in. The last receiver that I would maybe consider that's available on the market is Danny Amendola, another veteran, slot guy, something to consider.
Okay. Yeah.
And we know he won't mind working with Wes Welker. We know that.
No, he definitely won't mind working with Wes Welker. That's for sure. Yeah. So for me, I agree with you. Bay, you said Golden Tate. That was kind of who I mentioned last Tuesday. So I'm in full agreement with that. I think Golden Tate fits perfectly for what we want to do. So I absolutely love that. And another name that you mentioned, Sam, was Brian Poole. So there is rumor right now that Sherman is choosing between Seattle and San Francisco. I like Richard Sherman. I would love him as a mentor if he's willing to come off the bench. But I don't think Sherman is that type of guy, and you've got to be willing to start him. And I'm just not willing to do that at this point in his career. I think he's an absolute liability when we want to go man press. And quite frankly, we've got a team that is built to do that outside of bringing Sherman in. I think he's got a little too much of an ego where he's not going to be a guy that comes in when somebody's injured. So for that reason, I want to pass on Richard Sherman. But Brian Poole is a guy that I would love to bring in. Super underrated. He's rotted away a little bit with the Jets, but he is a very good nickel type corner and just gives us that added depth that I feel like we still need in the secondary. Drake Kirkpatrick could be another guy. So for me, bring in a veteran that can help these rookies out, at the same time compete, play, but please not Richard Sherman. That's my only thing that I'm going to say is unless Sherman is willing to come off the bench, I don't want him back. It's time to move on from Sherman.
If he's on the field, you're almost telling the offense that you're in zone. Because he's not keeping up with deep crossers anymore. We saw him get burnt in the 2019 playoffs numerous times. Sammy Watkins, Devontae Adams. Sherman, thank you, but no thank you.
Listen, if he goes back to Seattle, I think that's a major advantage for us. And I would expect that we picked on him, just to be frank with you. And you look at guys like Ayuk, who can give him a good double move. Debo, just get him out in the open field against him. I think it would be a major disadvantage for Seattle. And again, unless he's willing to come off the bench, I'm just not willing to have him back. But we do need some depth at the secondary because if Rhett goes down, we are in a world of hurt. So
yeah, we are.
That's where I'm at with it.